Sometimes a game has a feature that, for whatever reason, you become obsessed with. At one point in time for me, that was the Pokéathlon. Only in HeartGold and SoulSilver, the Pokéathlon was a competition-based feature similar to Pokemon contests or the Pokemon musical. However, unlike these two features, the Pokéathlon was hype. Truly a combination of Pokemon and Decathlon, the Pokéathlon is a collection of track and field events for your Pokemon to participate in. The points you receive from participating in these events can be used at the athlete shop to purchase a wide variety of items, some of which aren't easily accessible otherwise. But honestly, I don't care about any of that right now. As you can see by the title, I'm here to talk about the events. The Pokéathlon itself is split up into 5 different courses, being speed, power, skill, stamina, and jump. Each of these courses consists of 3 events that focus on the performance stat of the course, while also incorporating a few other stats as well. There's a total of 10 events across the Pokéathlon, being Hurdle Dash, Pennant Capture, Relay Run, Block Smash, Circle Push, Goal Roll, Snow Throw, Ring Drop, Lamp Jump, and Disc Catch. And to continue my brand of answering Pokemon questions that nobody asked for, today I'll be ranking every single event, from worst to best. I'm pretty much ranking these off my own personal preference, but I did try my best to take a step back and look at each event for what it is to try to keep my bias in check. Before we jump in, be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more niche Pokemon content like this. My dog and I would both appreciate it. Alright, let's not waste any more time and get started with ranking all the Pokéathlon events. So for some context, when making this video I wrote up an initial ranking of all the events, then went and played them all to get footage, and then finalized my ranking. And after playing them all again, there were definitely a few changes made throughout the order. But the one thing that never changed was my number 10. At the very bottom of the list, we have Goal Roll. Goal Roll is basically just a 4-way soccer match. And if your initial thought when hearing that is, well, that sounds pretty hectic, you'd be absolutely right. This is one of those mini-games that frustrates you to play. With 4 teams and 3 Pokemon per team, you have 12 Pokemon crammed into one field, and it's almost impossible to treat this event as anything other than a game of pinball. It's hard enough to control your Pokemon as is, and having to keep track of 3 different Pokemon while trying to keep the ball from getting ricocheted into oblivion makes for a subpar experience. I often found myself using one Pokemon for offense while leaving the other 2 in front of my goal just to give myself less to focus on. I also did this because any goal not only gives a point to the scoring team, but takes away a point from the team who was scored on. I understand why they did this, but it really makes the scoring weird compared to the rest of the events. It's too bad, because I feel like Goal Roll has potential and there's quite a bit of nuance to its mechanics, but in practice, it's pretty much a jumbled mess. So, sorry to all the Goal Roll fans out there. Next is an event that, like Goal Roll, has potential, but there's just too much holding it back from being great. Here we have Pennant Capture. The goal of Pennant Capture is to run around this small sandbox area and collect pennants, and bring them back to the starting area to get points. While you're running around, you can also steal flags from opponents by slamming into their back. Even though it's just one spot from the bottom, I want to emphasize that this event is already so much better than Goal Roll. It's a great idea and is challenging enough without being overly frustrating. The reason I have it at number 9 is because it could have been so much better. Most importantly, the play area needs to be about double the size. With all the obstacles littered around, it restricts the play area by a pretty notable amount. I know the tight maneuvering is part of the challenge, but making the area bigger would allow for much more flexibility in the placement of the obstacles. Speaking of which, all the obstacles are always in the same spot, which to me is just lazy because other events randomize their obstacles, so why not this one? Also, giving all teams the same starting position causes a lot of traffic, which I know is part of the challenge, but is still less than favorable by design. The event could have been the same if all 4 players entered from different sides. Last in my list of complaints, the event needs to be longer. It's a total of 60 seconds, but would have been a lot better with an extra 15 to 30. I know all I've done for Pennant Capture is list improvements, but I promise you, it's still way better than f***ing Goal Roll. The next entry and my number 8 spot is Snow Throw. It's just a big old snowball fight. That's about it. I mean, you can make snowballs bigger to stun the opponent, but they don't earn you any extra points, so the game pretty much boils down to spamming smaller snowballs. It's not a bad event, it's just nothing impressive. A lot of time you'll find yourself flicking snowballs wildly, which may not always work since a lot of them collide in midair anyways. Snow Throw also ranks pretty low for me because it's one of the events that's only present in one course, so it's kind of forgettable. Honestly, I kind of forgot about it until making this video. In terms of positives, it's one of the few events that takes advantage of the DS's vertically aligned screens, which makes it more immersive. That being said, as someone who was recording the footage side by side, I definitely struggled. But hey, that's an ish me, not an ish you. The only other thing I'll say is that Snow Throw is easily the biggest outlier of the group. The other events include tests of strength, speed, stamina, and then you have a snowball fight. Around this time is when we're getting into the events I would genuinely consider are good, not just in concept, but in practice as well. And the event to kick off this improvement is number 7, Ring Drop. Ring Drop is a 4-player sumo match where the goal is to knock opponents off the platform while staying on yourself. Overall, it's a well-made and well-balanced event. You can sit there and slam into opponents continuously, but you'll probably find yourself flying off the edge the second they move out of the way. Plus, you can jump over your opponents to bait them into flying off as well. And with only one member from each team present at a time, you're not getting overwhelmed like you would on goddamn goal roll. Anyways, Ring Drop is one of the events I think would be a ton of fun to play with your friends instead of just computers, especially with a longer time limit. That all being said, I don't know if it was just me, but I found the controls to be a bit finicky and some of my Pokemon just flew out of the ring with one move. Speed is a factor in this game, and a couple of my Pokemon had decent speed stats, but I felt like the extent to which it was happening was a little absurd. Overall, Ring Drop is a pretty decent event. The ones above it are just better. The next event bounced around in my ranking quite a lot. On one hand, I think it's perfectly made and can warrant a higher spot on the list. However, after consideration, it's just too simple to give it that much credit. The event I'm talking about is Block Smash. In Block Smash, you're breaking through blocks as quickly as possible to get the highest score you can. The stronger you are, the less hits it'll take to break a single block. And over time, you'll need to swap out members that are getting low on stamina. It's a great event and actually benefits from being one of the shortest ones at only 30 seconds. It's a half minute of going as fast as you can, and it's really engaging. That being said, you can't deny that in practice, it's really basic. You're just tapping your screen as fast as you can while occasionally clicking the switch button. Overall, I was really torn on its placement. While it's only at 6, I want to emphasize that it's a high 6, much closer to the top than the bottom. Yeah, don't think about that logic too much. Now officially in the top half, we have our first event from the jump course, being Disc Catch. This event involves all 12 Pokemon standing on a platform in the middle of the water and timing their jumps to catch discs flying towards them. Depending on whether you're standing on the platform, you'll receive either 1, 2, 3, or 5 points. While you're trying to catch discs, you can slam into opponents and potentially knock them off the platform. Disc Catch is the best example of high risk, high reward of all the events on the list. You can try to wait in the 5-point section, but the disc might get snatched up before reaching you, or you might even be launched off by an opponent. You can play it safe and stay in a lower zone, but it might come back to hurt you once the points are tallied. Or hey, maybe you spend the whole time treating the game like Ring Drop and constantly ram into your opponents. You've got options. Like Snow Throw, Disc Catch also takes advantage of both screens for the event, which, besides hurting me in the recording, is a great detail. Even though this event is only playable in the jump course, it was a lot more memorable than some of the other events. However, it does have a couple shortcomings. Like with Pennant Capture and Goal Roll, I think Disc Catch could benefit from a bigger play area. 12 Pokemon on this one platform is quite a lot, especially since the point-based layout makes it feel a bit more compact than it really is. Otherwise, my only other criticism is that against computers, some rounds of this game can be a bit annoying. Most computers either crowd the front and prevent you from getting points, or will focus all their energy on ramming you off the edge. That being said, it is the name of the game, and maybe I'm just salty because I got knocked off the platform more than I'd like to admit. Regardless, Disc Catch is a great event and deserves its spot in the top half. From my initial ranking to my final list, this event changed the most drastically. Initially, it was going to be amongst my bottom 3, but after playing it again, I realized that it deserves a lot more credit than I was going to give it. The event I'm referring to is Circle Push. Pretty simple overall, Circle Push centers around the Pokemon attempting to stay inside circles projected onto the field while pushing others out. Once the timer runs out each round, any Pokemon within a circle earns the number of points on it. Like Disc Catch, there's an element of high risk, high reward with some of the smaller and high value circles. However, it's not nearly as frustrating. You won't find yourself being pushed completely off the platform very often, but you will be fighting to the last second to make sure you're in that circle, because all it takes is one little nudge before the timer runs out for 5 points to turn into 0. There really isn't a whole lot to this game, but it's super entertaining and engaging. Out of all the games on the list, it's the one I want to play most with other people for the sheer chaos of those final seconds leading up to the point tallies, where everyone's frantically shoving each other. This event is also the perfect length. There's 6 rounds in total, which was a pleasant surprise after expecting it to only be about 3 or 4. Overall, Circle Push is a solid event, and I really don't have anything negative to say about it. And the only reason it's not higher is because everything else is just that much better. But hey, 4th place, not bad. Now that we're in the top 3, this is a good time to remind everybody that while I tried to be unbiased to an extent, this list is still my favorites. And while I feel like I put this event higher than some people would expect, it's the first event that comes to mind when I think of the Pokéathlon, the Relay Run. Relay Run is super simple. Run around the track, avoid the obstacles, and switch out your Pokemon when they're getting tired. That may not sound like enough to warrant 3rd place, but it's quite literally the perfect event. It would be a disservice to have a Pokemon decathlon and not have at least one event be a race, and it's a good one at that. There's a variety of obstacles placed on the track that are randomized every race, and some of the obstacle placements can make the track quite awkward to maneuver. What's also nice about Relay Run is that you're only really focused on your Pokemon, but you do have the ability to run into and stun opponents as well. It's not a major part of the race, which is actually quite nice. Looking back at Pennant Capture and the copious amount of times you'd be stunned from knocking into your opponents, I feel like Relay Run found a good balance of all this while still maintaining focus on the race itself. Most importantly, Relay Run is just satisfying. This may have the most bias of any placement thus far, but you can't deny that Relay Run is classic, well executed, and a whole lot of fun. I mentioned for the last one how it would be a disservice to not have a race in a decathlon-based game. Potentially besting Relay Run at filling that slot is my 2nd place event, the Hurdle Dash. On the surface, this event may seem a little too simple. In Hurdle Dash, you have all 3 of your Pokemon running a race at once. The Pokemon run automatically, so your only job is to tap them to make them jump. Seems easy, right? Well, what's really cool about Hurdle Dash is that the better you are, the more difficult it gets. As you successfully time your jumps, your Pokemon will start to pick up speed, which in turn gives you a tighter window for the next jump. Now multiply this by 3 since you're controlling all your Pokemon, and you'll quickly feel overwhelmed with how fast some of these hurdles come at you. Another interesting factor to think about is that the faster Pokemon may make things harder for you. While you're more likely to be in the lead, a faster Mon means less time between hurdles and thus more precise timing. Not many of these events have a really high skill ceiling, but with Hurdle Dash being treated like a more individual event, it's one of the few that does. However, Hurdle Dash isn't treated like a completely individual event, as throughout the race you can see the placements of all 12 Pokemon participating. It helps the competitive aspect a ton when you run into a hurdle and drop from 1st to 4th. All in all, Hurdle Jump is a pretty amazing Pokéathlon event. There's just one that slightly edges it out. So funny enough, my number 1 event is easily the least realistic decathlon event IRL. You're more likely to see a snowball fight than you are this. My number 1 Pokéathlon event is the Lamp Jump. In Lamp Jump, your goal is to launch your Pokemon into the air to hit as many lamps as you can to get the highest score possible. For every lamp you hit in a single jump, the value of each lamp will go up by 1 point until maxing out at 5. So for example, hitting 8 lamps in one jump nets you a total of 30 points. You do have to be careful though, as reckless jumping can cause your Pokemon to smack into each other, stunning them for a couple of seconds. So take earlier what I said about the high skill ceiling of Hurdle Jump and crank it up to 11. With only your team on the field and fixed lamp placements every game, the only RNG in Lamp Jump is you. I'm sure someone at some point has gone off the deep end with calculating trajectories and angles to maximize their score. As they should, because outside of Block Smash, it's the only event that doesn't have an element of RNG you can't control for, be it map generation or the computer's input. Getting back to the event itself though, it's so satisfying. Again, making use of the DS's vertical screens, visually it's the perfect event. From seeing your Pokemon fly through the air, watching the points add up, and hitting those perfect arcs from time to time, it's one of the events I want to play on repeat more than any other. Which is probably why I played the jump course the most out of them all. Like I mentioned earlier, Lamp Jump is by far the least realistic event for the decathlon, but I have to give props for whoever thought of it. Because they quite literally made the best event in the entirety of the Pokéathlon. And there you go. What do you think of my ranking? Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. I know some people really don't care about the Pokéathlon in the slightest, but I hope you dedicated Poké-athletes out there appreciate it just as much as I do. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I've got some great stuff in the works, so look forward to it. And as always, as thanks for making it to the end of the video, here's a picture of my dog. Talk to y'all soon.